Once upon a time, in a quaint village nestled in the heart of a dense, dark forest, there lived a young girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She was called so because she had a beautiful red hood that her grandmother had made for her. Little Red Riding Hood was a sweet and innocent child who, one sunny morning, Little Red Riding Hood's mother called her into the kitchen. "My dear," she said, "your grandmother isn't feeling well. She's been bread, a pot of homemade jam, and a bottle of her favorite wine. Be a good girl and don't dawdle along the way. Stay on the path and don't talk to strangers." Little Red Riding Hood happily agreed, took the basket, and set off for her grandmother's house. She skipped through the woods and joined. Meanwhile, deep within the forest, a cunning wolf had caught wind of Little Red Riding Hood's journey. He had a wicked plan in mind. He knew that the little girl would make a tasty meal. So the wolf took a shortcut through the woods to reach the grandmother's house before Little Red Riding Hood. Arriving at the grandmother's cottage, the wolf knocked on the door. "Who is it?" came a feeble voice from inside. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood," replied the wolf, trying to mimic the girl's sweet voice. The unsuspecting grandmother, thinking it was her beloved granddaughter, said, "Come in, Dee." The wolf entered the cottage and gobbled up the poor grandmother in one gulp. Then he dressed in the old woman's clothes and crawled into her bed, pulling the covers up to his nose. A short while later, Little Red Riding Hood reached the cottage. She knocked on the door and called out, "Grandmother, it's me, Little Red Riding Hood. I've brought you some goodies to make you feel better." The wolf, still disguised as the grandmother, replied with a sly smile, "Come in, my dear." As Little Red Riding Hood entered the cottage, she noticed something strange about her grandmother. "Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have!" she exclaimed. "All the better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood grew more puzzled. "And grandmother, what big eyes you have!" "All the better to see you with, my dear," the wolf replied again. Getting even more concerned, Little Red Riding Hood asked, "But grandmother, what big teeth you have!" The wolf couldn't contain his hunger any longer. With a wicked grin, he leapt out of the bed and snarled, "All the better to eat you with." He lunged at the terrified girl, but just as he was about to reach her, a brave woodsman who had been passing by heard Little Red Riding Hood scream. He rushed into the cottage, wielding his axe, and with a swift stroke, he defeated the wolf, rescuing the girl and her grandmother. From that day forward, Little Red Riding Hood learned to be cautious when speaking to strangers, and the villagers were always on the lookout for any lurking wolves in the forest. The woodsman's bravery was celebrated, and Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother lived happily ever after.